Well, I'm in Chufu in Shandong province of China. It's quite an interesting place. So, in my last video, I mentioned my two failed business startup ventures and thought this week I'd get more into it. Now, at that time, starting my own business was the last thing I thought I would end up doing. So, I will explain my reasoning and methodology and what became one of the greatest blunders of my life. Well, this story begins in 2007 when I met Natasha, who I mentioned in my last video. As I said, she became one of the most important people in my life, and at that time was the most important person to me. And I had known her for several years. Of course, I wanted to express how I felt to her, but somehow words couldn't do me justice. So I needed to get more creative. How could I express how I felt? Well, her birthday was coming up, so I thought I'd let Hallmark do the work for me. But no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find a greeting card worthy of my Natasha. Well, Hallmark isn't exactly the epitome of sagacious prose. But in fact, there were no companies that could replicate the words that could express the level of feeling I had for that woman. I should think that in all of language, no words come close to expressing that level of joy, dedication, and love that I needed to provide. So, naturally, my next step was to take matters into my own hands. My writing was improving at that time, so I wrote a greeting card filled with my admiration and devotion to her. I bought a ream of greeting card stock and printed it out in the most flourished font available. And on the cover, I drew all the pictures of things that brought us together. Well, I wasn't exactly Picasso. And I sent it to her. She was very happy to receive such a gift. But I started getting ambitious. I decided to send more cards to some of my friends and family as well, and they reveled at it. Certainly, my work far surpassed anything Hallmark could ever provide. And at that time, Natasha showed me some of her design work, which I thought was very good. Now, with her design skills and my writing ability, I felt we could produce masterful greeting cards. The stage was set. At the end of 2009, I discussed the idea with her, and she was thrilled by it, instantly assigning me tasks of writing what would be my first 200 different styles of cards for various occasions. I shared my ideas with her in early 2010 when we were already kind of starting to drift apart. She thought my ideas were pretty good, but could be better, so I worked harder at it. It was an easy thing to do, since by that time my company had basically cut my hours in half. I was even considering partnering with flowers.com and or my local flower shop to provide a greeting card and gift service. I was getting ready to distribute my cards to all the major card shops in my area, but I still needed a business name. So in early 2010, I hired a business development team for a substantial fee. They schooled me in business startups and SEO and helped develop my website. I decided on the name Creative Inspirations, as I was the creative aspect. Well, Natasha and I were really. And Natasha was my inspiration. It was going to be an international partnership, but when I registered it in August 2010, it was a sole proprietorship. So now that my business was registered and my website developed, I just needed product to sell. Somehow, at that time, Natasha became less available and she really hadn't helped me much. I should also point out that I also started my second business, EchoGearStore.com, which was essentially an internet dropshipping business where I coordinate with environmental product sellers to provide services to customers seeking green living. It was my effort to protect the environment. I designed a newsletter giving information and advice to my customers and at the same time offering environmental services. My first product was going to be a rainwater barrel for watering lawns since most rainwater eventually just ends up in sewage. This was at a time when PPC and dropshipping were a huge market and advertising was not yet co-opted into Facebook and YouTube. So I thought it was rife for profit. And it probably could have been too. But in March 2011, the company I was working for went under, so I lost a substantial part of my income. In April 2011, as I was drifting apart from Natasha, she mentioned that she had become too busy with school and couldn't help me with my business. Not that she really ever had, especially since I started the business for her. In May 2011, my business development team came under fire from the federal government for deceptive business practices. The same kind of legal mess that basically shut down the company I was working for. My business development team basically ran my website, so I was no longer able to post content. I considered starting over again with another web developer, but I simply no longer had the capital to invest into those two companies and started to neglect them. Job hunting took just about all of my time back then. Without Natasha, I didn't know how I could continue with the greeting card business. So I let both businesses fall into limbo. Not a single sale was made. Certainly, there were a lot of reasons for my business failing, besides my lack of funds and website limbo. Physical greeting cards were being replaced with e-cards and essentially free service, with which I couldn't compete. Certainly, the monopoly Hallmark had on the industry was staggering. And by that time, the likes of Amazon, Facebook, and YouTube were becoming giants in the industry. PPC and dropshipping were going through a tremendous paradigm shift for which I wasn't prepared. So, just that. By 2012, I had basically given up on both businesses, and that is where I stand today. I could have another opportunity, or if I could have another opportunity, certainly I would like to start them up again, but, well, we'll see what happens in the future. Perhaps I could entice the likes of Miss Fuji to assist me in that endeavor. Well, if you like this content, feel free to give it a like, share, subscribe, and comment, and maybe consider donating to my Patreon. Link below. Donations would certainly help me to bring these businesses to light. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.